They buried them beneath the dining hall. Every child had a cross, every cross had a name, and every name matched a file the church claimed never existed. They weren't supposed to be found. 93 crosses, 93 names, one building, and one truth that has stalked the shadows of Pennsylvania for almost 2 centuries. But this isn't just about a forgotten orphanage or unmarked graves. This is about what happens when power disguises itself as mercy, when institutions that preach salvation become temples of suffering. You're not here for bedtime stories. You're here because you felt it, somewhere deep beneath your skin, the sense that something is wrong with the world we've been told to trust. That's not paranoia, that's instinct, and you're not crazy. You're waking up. Santa Eulalia wasn't just an orphanage. It was a stage, a mask, a cathedral of silence for the experiments of men who believed they were God. Built in 1834 and raised in secrecy by 1887, it was supposed to fade like fog under morning sun. But the records didn't all vanish. The whispers didn't all die, and those who saw, who heard, never forgot. What you're about to hear has never been fully spoken out loud. There were attempts, sure, a letter here, a deathbed confession there, but every time someone tried to bring this story to light, something stopped them. Not this time. This is not just a tale of missing children. It's a dissection, a forbidden excavation of the mechanics of obedience. How institutions condition morality, how guilt becomes a tool, how rituals, disguised as charity, become chains. This isn't about Catholicism or Protestantism. This is about systems that feed on silence. Structures built to look holy while functioning like prisons. And if you're hearing this, you're not just listening, you're remembering. Somewhere inside you, beneath the conditioning, beneath the polite denial, you already know. The greatest evils don't scream. They whisper, they kneel, they hold candles in dark chapels while they teach children how to disappear. You've been taught to ignore the door at the bottom of the stairs. I'm going to open it. Walk through carefully. Once you see what's inside, there's no unseeing it. Let's begin. In the dead center of 1835, Millbrook was still sleepwalking. The town's heartbeat followed the chime of the church bell and the Sunday sermons of Father Kellerman, who stood taller and colder than the crucifix behind him. By now, Santa Eulalia Orphanage had become sacred folklore, the Lord's refuge for the unwanted, they said. But behind the doors sealed to the public, a darker scripture was being written, and the ink wasn't metaphor. That spring, the fog clung to the hills longer. Locals whispered about a stench that would rise briefly in the mornings from the forest behind the orphanage, like wet copper and burning herbs. They blamed it on rotting vegetation. But hunters who ventured near swore they saw pale figures moving in the trees. Small figures, barefoot and slow. The kind of movement you'd expect from something either wounded or controlled. Then came the letters. 2 anonymous notes, written in shaky cursive, appeared slipped under the chapel doors of Millbrook's Protestant church and the town's general store. Both bore the same 7 words. They do not leave. They go under. No signature. No return. The pastor dismissed it as anti-Catholic slander. The shopkeeper quietly burned his copy in the stove, but the few who saw those letters before they vanished, men with open eyes and gut, deep instincts, began to wonder. It was around this time that Clara Whitmore, the youngest daughter of Dr. Thomas Whitmore, began waking up screaming. Night after night, she would bolt upright in her bed, clutching her throat and crying out the same words. The bell won't stop. The bell won't stop. She had never been near the orphanage. Her mother assumed she was simply nervous about her upcoming confirmation ceremony. But when her drawings changed, when they went from simple daisies and butterflies to pictures of children with hollow eyes kneeling in rows before a burning tree, Dr. Whitmore began to suspect something far worse. It's easy to ignore what we can't explain. It's easier still to believe that something sacred could never be malevolent, but that belief, that blind trust, is the oldest weapon of control. And in 1835, Millbrook was a town disarmed. Santa Eulalia was not a sanctuary. It was a system, a sealed chamber where obedience was forged through ritual, where fear became worship, and where the children who vanished weren't lost. They were used. Used for what? You already feel it, don't you? Keep going. The descent has only just begun. 37 names, 37 inked souls. By 1836, the orphanage reported 27, no death records, no adoptions, just 10 names gone, as if they had never drawn breath, never held a spoon, never whispered to each other beneath moth-bitten covers. But one of them, Elias Grange, kept a record. He was 11, mute and brilliant. Elias hid pages beneath the floorboards in the West Wing, scrawled in a code that wasn't cracked until the late 1980s. His journal contained no dates, only phases of the moon. It described ceremonies held at night under half-light, with Father Kellerman leading children in robes, chanting phrases that matched no known scripture. They make us walk the circle 7 times. We don't blink or speak. If someone does, they don't walk again. The bell rings inside us. Not sleep, they call it stilling. When they take your name, you start to forget your body. The journal ends abruptly. The final page is a single word, written over and over until the paper is nearly torn through. Under, shepherds from the East Hills stopped coming into town. The forest paths they once used began swallowing dogs and dragging horses into sudden silences. Reports of children humming in the trees grew frequent. Always the same melody, no words, just 6 notes, low and cold, like something remembered from before you were born. The Millbrook Town Council summoned Father Kellerman for questioning. He arrived smiling, too smiling, dressed not in robes but in plain gray, with fingers bandaged at the knuckles. He sat through an hour of inquiry and answered nothing. Nothing of substance, at least. Instead, he said, when God speaks to you through children, you do not interrupt him with your politics. Then he stood and left, just walked out, and no one followed. That same night, Councilman Barrett hung himself in the bell tower. The bell rang 41 times before someone cut him down. Her husband found her shoes by the garden gate and a trail of salt leading into the fields. No struggle, no blood, just her perfume lingering in the air like regret. Clara never spoke again. Instead, she began carving figures into the walls of her bedroom with a piece of bone. Not animals, not people, shapes that spiraled and folded, patterns that moved when you didn't look directly at them. Visitors said the walls felt warm, and humming, yes, always the humming, was now audible through the plaster. Whitmore begged the town to shut the orphanage down. No one listened. They couldn't. By then, most of them had stopped dreaming. Those who did dream spoke of tunnels under the orphanage, of children with waxy skin and hollowed mouths, whispering a name no one could recall after waking. Flames erupted from Santa Eulalia just before dawn. Smoke blackened the sky for 3 days, but no one in town moved to help. They watched, silent, paralyzed. No bodies were recovered, no remains, only scorched pews, melted altar pieces, and a single metal bell that had fused into the stone floor of the chapel. It had no clapper, yet witnesses swore they heard it tolling as the roof collapsed. The orphanage was never rebuilt, but no plants ever grew on its grounds again. The following year, the Whitmores left Millbrook. But before they did, Dr. Whitmore buried something near the edge of the forest. Not a body, something smaller. He marked the spot with a circle of iron nails and a single carved stone with a spiral on one side. The inscription read, "She does not sleep, she listens." A funny thing about Millbrook, Every photo of the orphanage taken before 1838, gone. Archives burned in a storage fire in 1954. Every copy of Elias Granger's journal stolen or lost. The floorboards where they were found rotted out and replaced during a silent renovation in 1972. Only oral accounts remain, and even those are fragmenting. One woman, a descendant of Clara Whitmore, claimed the humming started again in her home in 1993. Her daughter had drawn a familiar shape on her school binder, a spiral flanked by 6 stick figures kneeling. That daughter, she vanished in 1995. No sign, no note, only a song left playing in her cassette deck. 6 notes, looping endlessly. In 2007, a small paranormal research group tried to film a documentary at the site of the orphanage. They made it 23 minutes into filming before the cameraman collapsed. Seizure, according to the coroner. The footage he recorded was mostly static, except for one segment, 4 seconds long, in which the audio reveals a whisper, opened from underneath. The footage was lost in post-production. All 5 researchers quit the project. One of them now resides in a private facility. She's non-verbal, but she hums, yes, the same 6 notes. Doctors tried to match the melody to known songs, hymns, lullabies. There is no match. You shouldn't. Not entirely, because belief is the bait. That's how it begins. That's how they begin. The more you believe, the more the doors open. But disbelief won't protect you either. It's not your belief that matters. It's theirs, the children, the ones below. They've never stopped waiting, and if you've read this far, if you've felt something, then the spiral has already turned in your direction. Listen closely. Do you hear it? That low humming? No, you will. They always hum before they arrive. That wasn't always the case. Early atlases listed between 2 now abandoned mining towns, but sometime after 1961, it started disappearing from state records, even as the town continued to receive federal mail. No one knows why, or rather, no one admits to knowing, but the land remembers. Travelers passing through have reported strange detours, GPS reroutes, roads that don't exist appearing on satellite images, then vanishing the next day. One couple claimed they drove into Millbrook in 2011, then lost an entire day. Their dashcam footage cuts to black for 6 hours. When it resumes, they're parked in front of the old orphanage site, where the forest has since overtaken the ruins. The man has a nosebleed. The woman is singing. It's locked from the inside. No knob, no visible hinges. They call it the quiet door. Old blueprints show nothing there, just a blank wall. But in 1986, during a repainting, a volunteer named Maria Langston heard knocking from inside, followed by a voice, childlike and distant. We remember you. Maria died 5 days later, brain aneurysm. Perfectly healthy, 32 years old. Before she died, she scrawled something in lipstick on her bathroom mirror. Do not open IT. The quiet door is still there, still silent. Most of the time, in 1949, a 6-year-old was found wandering near Route 9 with no clothes and no memory. He had a small bell stitched into the skin of his left hand. Doctors removed it surgically. 2 days later, he vanished from the hospital. A nurse on duty claimed she saw 5 children standing in the hallway outside his room, holding hands, eyes closed. When she turned on the lights, they were gone. The boy was never seen again. The bell was kept in police evidence until 1981, when it cracked on its own audibly during a thunderstorm. The officer who catalogued the sound later reported hearing it in his home nightly until his suicide. Santa Eulalia's foundation wasn't original. It was built atop something older than the town, older than the county. Local Lenape oral history references a shallow god buried in the hills, one who whispers to the hungry and the forgotten. Surveyors once tried to dig a new water line near the site. Their tools stopped working, drills wouldn't turn, compass needles spun wildly. One worker went blind in both eyes after staring down into an exposed shaft. He said it wasn't darkness he saw down there. He said it was faces, dozens, all looking up, all smiling. It's called The Caretaker. Circa 1871. Anonymous artist. It shows a tall, thin figure in clerical robes, holding hands with 3 children whose eyes are blacked out. The figure has no face, just a pale spiral smeared like oil on water. People say if you look at it long enough, the spiral starts to move. But here's the thing, no one knows where the original is. Every museum that has tried to catalog the painting ends up with the same result. The frame arrives, the canvas is blank, but photographs of the painting still show the figure. It shows up in nightmares too. Especially for children. There was more in his journal. Pages were torn, yes, but some were restored in 2003 using ultraviolet imaging. One entry stands out, "Tonight we go under. They say the sky is too loud now. We must live in the hush. Father says we'll come back later. Better, with no more edges." What did he mean by no more edges? Speculation ranges from psychological dissolution to ritual transformation. But some believe Elias didn't die, that he's still down there, wherever under is, growing, changing, waiting to be let back in. Root and Ritual, Episode 6, The Ash Orphanage. They made it 22 minutes into the recording before static devoured the rest. No signal interference, just an empty hiss that pulses in waves like breath. Thousands downloaded the episode before it was pulled. Now, every so often, Reddit threads pop up from people who played the file backwards. One claims to have heard a child whisper his full name, first, middle, last. Another said she started humming the melody in her sleep. The last post was in 2021. It's only text. The spiral opened. Every 27 years, a local child goes missing, always in July, always on a Sunday. Always within walking distance of the orphanage site. No pattern to the age, gender, or family background. No ransom notes, no sightings. Police call it coincidence. Locals know better. They call it the choosing. No one talks about it aloud. But every parent in Millbrook keeps a candle burning in the window that weekend. Not electric, wax, handmade, and they tell their children very gently, if you hear humming in the trees, cover your ears and run. A lens, a key. Over time, people who study the Santa Eulalia case start drawing spirals compulsively, on napkins, on walls, in condensation on car windows, always turning in the same direction, always incomplete unless they close it in one breath. Some researchers theorize it's a sigil, a kind of mnemonic worm that lodges in your psyche. Others say it's a door, not to something, to somewhere, and once you draw it, truly draw it, without thinking, you've already stepped inside. With a missing town, a burned orphanage, a mute boy, a door that knocks from the wrong side, and children who never stopped humming. Some call it folklore, others a forgotten cult. But the facts remain. Every generation, it wakes up a little more. Every time someone asks the wrong question, it listens a little harder. And every time someone finishes reading this story, one more spiral turns underground. You can laugh, you can scoff, you can scroll away, but be honest, isn't there something humming now, very faintly behind you, under your breath, under the floorboards? Go ahead, listen. No date, no author. Just 20 minutes of ambient forest noise. At the 12:14 mark, a child begins humming. At 12:32, the microphone distorts. Sharp feedback, like something brushing against it. At 12:40, a voice, male and very old, whispers, "I know you're listening." That's the part most people talk about. But there's something worse, something almost no one catches. At 19:53, buried under the hiss and chirp of insects, another child voice, barely audible, says a name, yours. In journals, In graffiti near the old orphanage ruins, in margin notes from unrelated books stored in Millbrook's shuttered public library, we are the mouth, not the teeth. Linguists point out the phrase structure mirrors ritualistic phrasing found in early Aramaic exorcism rites. Others believe it's a metaphor, that the children, or whatever they became, were never the danger, just the vessel. But if they're the mouth, then who, or what, are the teeth? Some say it's still asleep. Others say it already ate once, and it liked the taste. The land was bought by a logging company in 1998, but no trees have been cut. GPS tags stop functioning near the south fence. Drones lose connection over the clearing. And nothing, no deer, no birds, not even insects crossed the boundary, except once. A fox wandered in during mating season. A park ranger followed, watching from a safe distance. The fox stopped in the center of the clearing and turned around. Its eyes were gone, not injured, not bloodied, just sealed, like skin grew over them. It opened its mouth and began to hum. The ranger quit the next day. Try this at home, though we don't recommend it. Draw a spiral on your bathroom mirror in condensation after a hot shower. Step back, let it dry. Then, after dark, light a candle and stare into the spiral for 60 seconds. Some say you'll see movement in the reflection behind you. Others say you'll hear a second breath, not your own. A few claim to see children watching from behind the glass, but everyone who tries it agrees on one thing: you never see your own face again, not quite the same. Something in the eyes always feels borrowed. In 1972, a religious nonprofit received a grant to construct a new youth shelter near the original Santa Eulalia site. Construction lasted 6 weeks, until the walls began to bleed. Contractors insisted it was rust runoff. Lab tests showed human hemoglobin O negative. They bulldozed it in silence. No press, no photos, just rumors. But here's the unsettling part. The architect's blueprints were copied from an old chapel in Italy that was burned during the 1603 plague. And that chapel? It too was named Santa Eulalia, found scribbled on the back of an orphan's birth certificate. Only partial lyrics remain, but local musicians have reconstructed the melody from oral fragments. It goes like this: down in the hush where the hollow boys lie, turn not your head when they start to cry, follow the bell if you want to be fed, sing to the spiral and sleep in the red. Children who hear it once tend to remember it forever. Some hum it in their sleep. One girl in Pennsylvania sang it in full, lyrics and all, despite never being exposed to it. Her parents recorded it. She hasn't spoken since. In 2004, a hiker found a soot-covered porcelain doll sitting in the middle of the Millbrook clearing. Perfectly preserved, no footsteps, no burn marks, just placed there. The doll had no eyes. When investigators took it into evidence, they discovered its torso was hollow, stuffed with scorched paper. One phrase was repeated across hundreds of tiny slips: "She's still warm." The doll is now kept in a climate-controlled vault. Sometimes its dress shifts, even though the air is still. One night, the security camera caught the doll facing the wrong direction. And the vault was still locked. Millbrook doesn't advertise its history. No welcome sign, no Santa Eulalia plaque. Even the locals deflect. Just stories, they say, nothing to see. But in every town council photo from 1947 onward, at least one face remains uncatalogued. Unnamed, always the same proportions, same eyes. One historian tried facial analysis across 70 years of Millbrook records. The match was exact, no aging. He labeled the file Elias Grange Continuity, JPG, and emailed it to 3 colleagues. That same night, the historian disappeared. His apartment was unlocked. His mirrors were smashed. You've read the entries, followed the spiral, noticed how time slips, how lights flicker slightly when you think too hard about a burned orphanage and a song you didn't know you knew. So now ask yourself, have you ever been to Millbrook? Are you sure? because people don't move to Millbrook. They return, usually after dreams, usually with gaps in memory, usually after humming in their sleep for weeks. And when they arrive, when their tires crunch that old gravel road and the sun turns gray over the hills, they don't ask questions. They just walk in, home.